207 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And the question that I'm posing here is, what does Putin do next? He's got his back up against the wall. Things did not pan out anything like what he thought it would, and he's just playing it cool, right? Like, oh, we're going to meet all our objectives, that kind of thing. I don't know that he's going to, but I do know that he's got some hard choices ahead. Today, we're going to be talking about primarily military things, and so if you're not interested in that, this is not the video for you, but I'm going to start here. So here is The Guardian. Russia's underperforming military capability may be the key to its downfall. Now, this is an excellent article, and I'm actually going to unpack it just for the sake of time in a separate video about how leadership affects the military. And yeah, they're just underperforming. I want to point out one thing at the very end of this video, of this article, and that's this. This is how I want to set the table. Russian troops are outnumbered, unmotivated, and their equipment is deteriorating. The Kremlin's prospects are rapidly diminishing, and that's where Putin is as we are starting right now. So I'm going to go to the Ministry of Defense. Here is the UK Ministry of Defense yesterday. Ukraine continues offensive operations in the northeast of the country, while Russian forces have established a defensive line between the Oskil River and the town of Satov. Okay, Russia seems likely sees maintaining control of this zone as important because it's one of the ways that they get material from Belgorod. In addition, this line sits along the border of Luhansk, which is part of this area that they claim to liberate, right? And so Russia will likely attempt to continue a stubborn defense of this area. We'll see if they're able to do it. Now, let's look at their update from today and see what they have to say. Russia has launched several thousand long-range missiles against Ukraine since 24 September, and there's no immediate military effect what they're doing right now. They're launching against like the dam in Kiviri, and it's an attempt to directly undermine the morale of the Ukrainian people. Flooding, darkness, whatever it is. But there's not really a military strategy. Okay, let's look at the Institute for the Study of War, and this is yesterday's Institute for the Study of War. Both yesterday and today were really profound. Okay, Russian forces continue to conduct meaningless offensive operations around the next city and Bakhmut instead of focusing on defending against Ukrainian counteroffensives that continue to advance. Well, it's meaningless because they're not actually going to take anything, and they may actually lose the big prize along the way. The Russians cannot hope to make gains around Bakhmut and Donetsk city on a large enough scale to derail the Ukrainian counteroffensives and appear to be continuing at almost robotic effort to gain ground in Donetsk Oblast and seems increasingly divorced from the overall realities of the theater. Russian failures to rush large-scale reinforcements into eastern Kharkiv and Luhansk Oblast leave most Russian-occupied northeastern Ukraine highly vulnerable to continuing counteroffensives. Yeah, so while they're doing this, they're going to lose that potentially. So that's what's going on. And then Ukrainian forces appear to be expanding positions of the east of the Skolkul of the Oskil River and north of the Seversky Donetsk River. And I'm going to show you on a map in just a little bit where this is going, which could allow them to envelop Russian troops holding Lyman. Lyman is actually one of the places that I think is going to fall very quickly, and I'll show you this in just a moment. The Russian defenders of Lyman do not appear to be directing reinforcements from elsewhere into that theater. It's like one part's not talking to the other. I don't know what it is exactly, but something is not functioning adequately. The military is supposed to operate like a body in unison. Okay, here's today, September 18th. Russian President Vladimir Putin is increasingly relying on irregular volunteer and proxy forces rather than conventional units. So I'm setting this up. They're not fighting well. They're not in the right position. They're relying on volunteers rather than actual full-fledged Russian troops, and so they have a whole bunch of problem sets. A prominent Russian mill blogger, that's a military blogger, reported Russian forces have already begun the process of forming and staffing the 4th Army Corps. They know that they need reinforcements, but they're going to put these with these inadequately trained, not really soldiers. Do you remember movie 300, where the Spartan leaders talking to the Athenians, and they're like, well, we brought X number of thousand people and you only brought 300. It's like, what are you? I'm a farmer. What are you? I'm a blacksmith. What are you? I'm a peasant. Whatever. Well, looks like we brought more soldiers. That's what's going on here. The formation of such ad hoc units will lead to further tensions, inequality, and overall lack of cohesiveness between forces. Like, militaries, look, it's a group sport, right? It's not an individual sport. You have to work together as a team. Some military formations offer financial incentives for every kilometer that the serviceman's unit advances. That might be what's going on in Donbas and Bakhmut, where they're trying, or Donetsk and Bakhmut, where they're trying to like continue to advance despite it's not working, and despite you don't have reinforcements, and despite your buddies over there are going to be overrun, and you might be overrun eventually. Russian opposition publication Insider reported instances of ethnic discrimination within Chechen units, noting that Chechen leadership deploys non-Chechens to the front lines before sending Chechens into battle. Okay, that's going to really screw things up. The Luhansk and Donetsk People's Republics, they don't play nice with anybody else. Like, they don't want to cross their, like, if they're in the Donetsk, they don't want to go into Luhansk and vice versa. They both previously refused to fight for each other, or refused to fight for each other's territory. The formation of irregular, hastily trained units adds little effective combat power to Russian forces fighting in Ukraine. So you can form these units, but if they don't fight well, they're just going to go into a meat grinder. Russian forces are likely attempting to conduct more deliberate and controlled withdrawal from western Kherson Oblast. Now, that's the north side of the river, northwest side of the river. There's 20,000 Russian forces there, so they're trying to figure out, okay, well, what do we do? We don't want to have another route like what we had before. So that will mean, on the plus side, Ukraine will gather a bunch of extra territory, but on the downside, the Russians will survive and then be able to form en masse somewhere else, like in the Donetsk or Luhansk, and that we don't want that. You want to wipe them out. You don't want to let them escape. Okay. Let's see if there's there is a little bit more. The Ukraine counteroffensive in Kherson is nevertheless making progress, and Russian forces appear to be attempting to slow it and fall back to more defensible positions rather than stop or reverse it. They're not going to be able to reverse it, but they can slow it, and they can cause Ukraine great casualties if they play their cards right, but they're not playing their cards right. A prominent Russian mill blogger also claimed that the Russian command issued a no retreat order last week for the Donbass, which means that they don't trust them. Look, it shows deep mistrust of the combat capabilities of the units receiving the order. So that's the jacked up situation that we're looking at right now on the military scene. Okay, so let's switch gears a little bit and start to look beyond just what's going on the battlefield. This is Kherson. This is the Moscow Times. Russia, Ukraine trade blame for shootings in Kherson. Kherson, the soldiers aren't there. So if there's shooting going on in Kherson, that's Russian occupied territory. This is city center. That's what we're talking about. This is Russian occupied territory where the actual army isn't even there. So that's jacked up for the Russians already. Ukraine's investigating 30,000 war crimes since the invasion began. So are the Ukrainians motivated to do something, especially when they're seeing more of what's coming out since 34,000, sorry, 34,000 alleged war crimes since the invasion of the country. Hundreds of bodies are found in this reclaimed territory. So are the Ukrainians now motivated? Yeah, they are crazy motivated to take back more and more ground. Zelensky vows not to let up as Ukraine says troops are crossing a key river into the northeast. Now, I told you I would show you where this is on the map, and I will. This is the key river that they're talking about crossing, and I'll show you how this is working. Okay, Ukrainians flee shelling of Kupiansk. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, as Russian forces try to slow the advances. So Ukrainian civilians are fleeing. Some are just getting out of Dodge. Some are collaborators, right? As Russian armed forces try to hold off a further dramatic advance by Ukrainian forces. Cars packed with families are streaming out of the city. Where is Kupiansk? Okay, so it's up here. If you look at the map, you see just these little changes as these forces just kind of push a little bit further. 15, 16, 17. Okay, so they're making this ground little by little as we're moving forward. Okay, cars packed with families are trying to get out. Kupiansk is a strategic railway junction that sits on either side of the river. So is Lyman, and Lyman is probably going to be next. Russia is now in danger of losing Lysychansk, a key Donbas city it seized over the summer of months of heavy fighting. Lysychansk and Severodonetsk were big. Now, again, that's Putin's stated goal. So I'm asking again, like, if you're Putin, what do you do next? Because you seem to be, I mean, your troops seem to be in free fall. Okay, here's CNBC. Putin's battlefield failures provide an opportunity for the world to step up efforts. And by the way, I'm going to get to something here at the very end, so stay with me. Provide an opportunity for the world to step up efforts to help end the war in Ukraine. Okay, so the world is entering this moment of maximum danger and at the same time maximum opportunity. Maximum danger because Putin is so dramatically failing. So it's great, but it's also problematic because what's he going to do? I keep hearing people say, well, you know, Putin and the rat backed into a corner and he learned this lesson and like he's going to just come out fighting. I don't know. I don't know that he can. Just stay with me. Okay, Ukrainian courage and resilience transformed his hubris into humiliation. The danger is rising that he could turn to weapons of mass destruction. But can he? Like the U.S. had nuclear weapons. They couldn't use them in Afghanistan. They couldn't use them in Iraq. So they were essentially off the table. Okay, it's disheartening that the UN, instead of focusing on how to best beat Russia's despot now and before winter wages, has been wrestling with the technicality of whether Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky should be allowed to speak via video link. Like that's what they were arguing about at the UN. They finally agreed to it, if I have my facts correct. But really. Okay, Russia is a member of the UN Security Council, has been doing everything in its power to block the speech. Zelensky could not have been more prophetic, and he was saying if the UN failed to stop Putin, if they did not unite and cause him to do it, they would resort to the law of the jungle. And that's why Zelensky keeps saying, okay, it's going to be solved on the battlefield because these documents don't work. And then Putin is turning that around saying, see, he's not going to create peace. He's not going to be willing to negotiate. Well, that's because you didn't listen to the documents that said that you can't do this to begin with. Okay. At any rate, that's where we are with that politically. But let's turn our attention militarily now. Now, this is really important. This is a CNN article that did a masterful job here, and I'm not generally a big fan of CNN, but this was good. The Russian military must now ask itself what sort of force and where exactly they're deployed that can regain the initiative after Ukraine captured more territory in 1 week than Russians had in 5 months. Like, since the initial invasion, they haven't captured as much territory as the Ukrainians lost. Did you understand that? Like, that is huge. Now, I went through the British, I went through the ISW, so you understand what's going on in the battlefield. They have this 500-kilometer long front line. They can attack wherever they want. The Russians aren't moving reinforcements to the places where it seems like they need to be doing it, and they're told, hold the line or else. And there's incentives to take more kilometers in places that might not be useful. So it's just jacked up all along the way. The Kremlin faces tough choices whether to declare general mobilization to reinvigorate its increasingly ragged units in Ukraine and how to manage a budget deficit at the same time. Now, but let's talk about the mobilization part. 3 days ago, David Petraeus was saying it's too late for them to generally mobilize. They have certain things that they need to accomplish in order to do that, and it's too difficult to get to that now. So Putin is really stuck. Chinese support for the Russian invasion, which was never wholehearted, may be waning. Like, what did Putin get out of the Shanghai Cooperative Summit? Nothing. I mean, he got a bland statement from President Xi where we were all wondering, like, uh-oh, if President Xi weighs in, if Xi put his thumb on the scale, it would change the dynamics radically. But that he chose not to has also changed the dynamics radically the other direction. Xi doesn't want Western sanctions because he wants to. He's going to be the big winner in this. He doesn't want to be banned from trade, and he's going to be the big winner. Okay, Ukraine's stunning counteroffensive across Kharkiv, combined with more attritional advances in the south, have been presenting the Kremlin and Russia's much criticized defense ministry with a range of bad options. And I think that's the greatest sentence, a range of bad options. That's what Putin has to deal with right now. They must choose which front to prioritize. Do they prioritize Kherson? Do they prioritize Kharkiv? Do they prioritize maintaining the Donbas? Whether to double down on efforts to fulfill Putin's stated objective, which is the seizure of Donetsk and Luhansk. Okay, so he can lose all the other stuff and hang on to that. And I think if he did that, he could hang on to that for a long, long time. Or he can try to hold on to everything, and I think he'll get chipped away at. The Donetsk is taller order now for the Russians. At the same time, the Russian defenses in Kherson are under growing pressure, thanks to Ukraine's success in cutting off the resupply across the Dnipro River. So because there's 20,000 Russians there, they can't get across back and forth very easily. It's a difficult thing. Russian military does not have a wealth of fresh units to inject into the conflict. We just talked about that. And what they are injecting are not going to be fighting very well. The 3rd Army Corps largely comprises volunteer battalions. And I just told you about the 4th Army Corps. So this is bad. Persistent reports of discipline fraying. Ukraine has also lost thousands of soldiers. We know that. Russia's artillery and rocket forces are still vastly outnumbered those of Ukraine, and they're unable to leverage this superiority into gains on the ground. So an army is supposed to fight in tandem. The soldiers on the ground with the tanks, with the air support, and Russia has been very poor at putting this combat combined arms together and making it work effectively. So Vladimir Putin acknowledged this on Friday, saying that the offensive operation in the Donbass goes at a slow pace, but it keeps going gradually. The Russian army occupies new territories, but he's not saying why. And the why is because he's been just beaten to a stub where they can't go any further. If they could go faster and further, they would go faster and further. But they're opposed, and he can't say that. He can't say, well, we really ran into a whole lot of resistance. He keeps this like, we're just going at the pace that we're going, and it's not working. Okay, despite calls in Moscow for a general mobilization, this seems unlikely. Putin said we are fighting with only part of the Russian army. That's the contract part. That's why we're going at a slow pace, because this is really not that big of a thing. So if you're Putin, what do you do? I don't think he has any good choices. There was that one line that said, like, he has a range of bad choices. He's got to figure out how to get out, but he wants to take some territory. He's not going to get the NATO concession. They're already moving headlong to NATO. He's already bludgeoned himself. The way that world leaders are treating him right now, the presidents of Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan were making him wait. Whoa, that's not a at the Shanghai Cooperative. So that's a problem. So, but why is this happening? So we know what is happening. Why is it happening? Because the Russian military has some significant issues, and in the next video, the very next one that I do, I'm going to explain why. There's a brilliant article, I'm trying to remember, I think it was in The Guardian, that explained why the Russian military is as jacked up as it is. So that's the very next article. If you're not a subscriber, click subscribe and click the bell and you'll get the notification for it. I really appreciate that you care enough to be watching this because you care about Ukraine.